Doing work around the house, I like to be as organized as I possibly can. Organization is not my strong suit, but I find that there are a few things that help me along the way. If you subscribe to my other YouTube channel, you'll know that I'm currently doing a very extensive renovation to my house. And I'm doing all the work myself, including all the electrical and the plumbing. So keeping track of all the various parts I need to do those jobs is a bit challenging. So I drew on my experience from my day job, and I made these trays to hold the parts for each job. And this one I'm keeping all of the screws that I used the most for this renovation, and I've labeled that screws. In this one I've got all the common electrical supplies that I'm using. And in this one I've got the plumbing fittings that I use the most. Of course, these have lots of other uses around the house and the workshop. And one of the neater things about them is that they're stackable. You can stack it up and store them in one small space, and they won't get filled with sawdust or other dirt. Now, it didn't take long for me to build these, and it didn't take much material, and I'll show you how I did that now. I've got a piece of 1/2-inch plywood that I'm going to use to make the trays with. Now, this is just a scrap that I had, and it's about 8 feet long and 16 inches wide. And I've made a bit of a cut list and figure that I can get 3 trays out of this complete. Now, the first step is to do some rough layout. Then I can cut them to length with my miter saw. Now that I've got them cut to the rough length, I can cut them to the final length, and that's 14 inches for these ones. That'll make up all the sides and the bottoms and the handles, and 10 inches for this one. Now that they're all cut to length, I can cut them into individual pieces, sides and bottoms and ends. I set the saw to 3 inches, and I'm going to cut the side pieces and the end pieces. So that's the ends. I need 6 of those. And the sides, I need 12 of those. They're all cut. Next, I'm going to cut the bottom pieces, and they're 4 1/4 inches wide. First cut on the handles is to 3 inches. Really, I should have done this when I was cutting out the sides and the ends. To lay out for the handles, I measure up 1 inch from the bottom on each end. And use my drawing bow to mark that semicircle. Then I measure down 1 5/8. And make a line. Measure over 5 and 9. Drill out the holes with a 1 1/4 inch Forstner bit. And it's just to cut it out on the bandsaw. And it's just to clean it up on the spindle sander and on the disc sander. Okay, now that the handles are done, I can set those aside. The bottoms are finished also, and the ends, so I can put those over here. And the next thing I need to do is machining operation on the side parts, and that'll be a rabbet in the bottom and a few dados on the sides. The first cut is a rabbet cut on the side to receive the bottom panel. Now that all the rabbets are cut, I need to cut a series of dados in the side here to receive the plywood dividers. I've got a 1/4 inch dado set up in the saw, and my fence is set to 2 7/8 for the first cut. Now the first dado is cut, I can move the fence over 2 inches and make the second cuts. There's one last dado, and that's right in the center. I'll move my fence over another 2 inches. This time, because the blade is so far from the fence, I'm using a backer piece. Okay, now that all the parts are cut, we're ready for some assembly. And do the same for the other side. Next step is to put the handle on. Here I'm just using the thickness of the plywood itself as a guide, and I'll make a line. And I'll put a little glue on here. I'm just going to put this over the end of my bench to support it and nail the handle on. Now, I'm using 3/4 inch nails, so they shouldn't go through. Next, I assemble the other side. Then the two halves can be put together. Now I'm ready to get the ends on. But I need a spacer to put between to make sure I have enough space between for the handle to go up inside. Well, that's one end on. Now I can put on the other end. That's it, basically. What's left to do is cut some dividers to go in here. For the dividers, I'm just using 1/4 inch plywood that I cut 2 1/2 inches wide. I'm not going to glue these in, I'm just going to leave them loose. That gives me the option of changing the configuration if I want to. I got the other two assembled and I left them to dry overnight. Today I'm just going to give them a fairly light sanding to round over the edges and make it a bit smoother. You could paint this if you wanted to, but I'm not going to bother. I also have another little trick for reinforcing these butt joint corners that I'll go into. And that's what the recess looks like. It's a good idea to clamp